What is up guys, Andy Foresty Manor here, and today we're talking all about the Hoka ONE ONE Torrent 2 on the long run test and the terrain test. Okay, so just coming up to mile 17. It's going to be 18 miles for the Torrent 2 today. Fantastic run, really hard, I'm not going to lie. It's been a tough one. That last mile was a 9:59 up a 400-foot hill there. But overall, solid workout for them. It's going to be coming up to 2.5 hours in the shoes. Really happy. Onto the terrain. And welcome back. It's now the terrain test, and I picked a really bad time to film, but a great example to show you of the type of terrain that I'm testing on. I'm going down this nice steep gravelly rocky path here, and today is the following week from the last long run, and today is going to be another long run, and I have no idea where I'm going. I'm just heading out to find some big hills, get some climbing done, and find as much terrain, different types to test as possible. I did a good selection last week, and this week is hopefully going to wrap it up. There's going to be a couple of types of terrain that I can't test on, but I'm not too worried. I'm going to get most of it done, hopefully mocking the Brecon Beacons type race. So yeah, let's get on with the run, see how much type of terrain we can find, and go from there. So there we go, 15 miles of much more technical terrain done in the Hoka ONE ONE Torrent 2. It's been a big climbing run today, and we've gone through mud, up slippery rocks, down slippery paths, up grass hills, you name it, we've covered it. So let's go back and talk about how we got on. So that's the long run test and the terrain test done and dusted in the Hoka ONE ONE Torrent 2, and it passed with flying colours. But today I'm going to be going through with you guys the pros and cons of this shoe in both the long run and the terrain test. With the first impressions miles, that now puts us up and over 40 miles in the shoe, so well on our way to the 100-mile review, which will happen over the next few months. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and we'll start with the long run. So we ended up doing 18 miles for the long run test, which ended up being a really good solid long run. I think we covered around 1600 or 1800 foot of elevation. It was a good runnable day, but sadly it was very hot, so I really was struggling towards the end of the run, but that did not have any impact on how the shoe performed. It was an absolute delight when we got it out there from mile 1 to the end. The one thing that works really well with me with Hoka's is just the plush cushioning within the midsole, and this thing was no different. Of course, with Hoka they use a lot of EVA foams, which can degrade and deteriorate rather quickly, so the lifespan of their shoes doesn't, or sometimes doesn't, lend itself to being as long as some of the other brands. However, whilst they're as good as they are in their prime, Hoka's for me are some of the best shoes that I've run in. The Rincon is fantastic, the Carbon X is absolutely brilliant, and this thing now is another fantastic addition to my Hoka ONE ONE lineup. So what I found with this shoe overall is it provided really good grip on that long run. We'll talk about the terrain in the grip and some of the areas that it can improve on. But on more runnable sections, more runnable trails, and even some single tracks without it being too muddy, it provided excellent traction. I felt very confident flying down hills. I felt very cushioned and comfy going up hills and running on the flat sections. And I think the perfect combination of cushion and breathability in this shoe made it so that that really hot day that we had when I did the long run, just the shoe, my feet did not feel like they were overheating, sweating too much. They just felt fine. They felt absolutely normal, and that again is massive credit to this upper here. Very breathable. We've got this sort of edging around here, which is some film-like material which goes around the edges of the upper, which is just to keep out some of the water in the puddles that you might go through. Very shallow puddles. It's not going to keep out anything massive. But with that being said, the top side of it here is very breathable. Lots of holes in the upper, relatively stretchy material, fits my wide foot perfectly. And so yeah, I've got to be honest with you, I found the long run really, really pleasurable. So we move on to the terrain test. Now this is the interesting one. This is the one I guess for you guys interested in the shoe will want to know a little bit more about because of the types of trails that you guys might run on. Are they similar to what I run on? Are they not? So let's dive into all of that. I ended up running, I think it was 15 miles on that run. We ended up getting nearly 3,000 foot of elevation. It was very much an up and down run. There was barely any runnable sections whatsoever, and it was rather muddy, as you can see by the midsole and the outsole of the Torrent 2. I basically went over as much of different types of terrain as I could. I've run on concrete in this shoe, adding in some extra loop mileage to some of the runs that I've been doing, and it worked fine on there. Not that this shoe is recommended for that, but if you have a few stretches of concrete in your runs that you need to get to the trail, maybe a mile or two, then this thing is going to be absolutely fine. It's certainly not a hybrid style trail running shoe like the Peg 36 Trail that I had. It's not that hybrid, but it certainly didn't cause any issues or felt unstable on the concrete. On the very runnable fire roads, again, it's absolutely fine, gives great grip, and I felt very, very strong. Where I also was able to test this was going up some steep rocky trails. So there's a nice stony track that I was able to go up and test it out on, and that held up really, really well. It was also a relatively gravelly section, a very steep gravelly section that I was able to test it up. Again, it held up really, really well. The only place that I found this thing let itself down, and it's really not its fault, it's just the depth of the lugs and the volume of the lugs, is the very muddy sections. I was flying down a hill in a rather muddy single track, and there was a few times that I was slipping and sliding down there. There was one point where I thought my whole body was going to go out from underneath me. I really put my all into that downhill to give it a good test. And yeah, it nearly gave out on me. So I had to be very careful from that point, doing the downhills and doing the very muddy sections. It didn't hold too bad, but if it's really deep, thick mud, which I did go through a few bits, it's not the best. And again, as I said, you're going to find better shoes for that. Shoes with deeper lugs, less lugs, so that the lugs can grip and the mud can splay and squidge out the side. Shoes like this, where you've got more condensed, smaller lugs, aren't really suited for those really wet, muddy days. But other than that, if you're not running in severely muddy conditions, then I've got to say this thing passed with everything else I threw at it. So on to my final thoughts on the shoe. How have I found it overall testing so far, and how am I going to be using it moving forward? Well, obviously I earmarked this thing for my race day shoe for the Brecon Beacons Mountain Marathon on October the 10th. And as long as we don't have any horrific torrential downpours, I'm going to be continuing to use this thing, gearing up for that race, because I've absolutely loved running it. As I said, if it gets really bad conditions, I might have to look at another shoe, lastminute.com, and try and find something a little bit more grippy with a little bit deeper lugs. But from what I gather and studying a bit of the course, a lot of it is very runnable fire roads and then up onto the Brecon Beacons and relatively runnable trails. I don't think there's going to be many off-piste, shall we say, going through marshlands, bogs, that sort of thing. So we should be okay with this shoe. I really hope we're going to be okay, because from the runs we've done in it already, I'm absolutely loving this thing. It's the best shoe that I could have gone for so far. So yeah, definitely going to be using it moving forward. Still going to be training in it. I think we're going to rack up well over 100 miles in the shoe. I don't intend on getting too many more trail shoes into test, although I do have another trail shoe here right now waiting for testing. So we'll be testing some others, but not as many as we're doing road miles in. So this thing will get well up and over 100 miles before we even get to race day, which will be interesting to see how it deteriorates over time and if it's still fresh enough for me to run in, or if I need to get a new pair ready for race day. So that's it. Those are my thoughts on the Hoka ONE ONE Torrent 2. I hope you've enjoyed them, and let me know in the comments below if you've managed to snag a pair, if you run in them, have you done similar tests to me, and how do you find them on different types of terrain? What terrain do you run on, and do you find that they hold up really well there? And if you are someone that's had the shoe for a while and you've got a fair chunk of mileage in them, let me know in the comments below how much mileage you've got and how they're holding out. How is the midsole? Is it flattening out at all like the Rincon does, or is it holding firm? So that's it for today, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and I will see you on the next one. Until then.